Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Today. I am your host, Wally Conway. Grateful that you're here with us. Also grateful for Monument Commercial Building Inspections, who allows us to do this each and every episode. So for all your commercial building inspection needs, Monument Commercial Building Inspections, monumentcommercial.com. You know, we've had a lot of conversations here about commercial real estate, and we attempt to get it from every imaginable perspective. We had it from the broker, from the builder, from the renovation contractor, from the insurer. And today we've got a special guest with us, and we're going to talk about commercial buildings from the perspective of the entrepreneur. Fast-growing companies, diverse companies that have needs for lots of space, and those needs are ever-changing in diverse locations. I'd like to welcome to the program today from Residential Warranty Services, Nathan Thornberry. Nathan, welcome to the program.
Good to be on, Wally.
So Nathan, just to set the stage, give us a feel for the scope in terms of numbers of people and the diversity of the businesses, from manufacturer to call centers to insurance. So the geography, the people, and the scope of the businesses, to give us some perspective.
Well, we have a core business of home warranties, home service contracts, a number of software initiatives, some development and manufacturing of products for the home inspection space. That is about 200 to 250 people all in all. Beyond that, we have some call centers that add a few hundred beyond that. We have commercial real estate holdings and leasehold estates currently in 8 or 9 states today, accounting for around 150,000 square feet. And we have in all sorts of different types of space too. There's, industrial, we have with loading docks, all the way to offices. Nothing big, higher than Class B. I don't do any Class A currently. So
Nathan, let's start it at the beginning. So we've got a business owner, could be a startup, could be something they're purchasing. That initial decision, shall I lease the space or shall I buy the space? What are the considerations as you're opening a division, starting up a business, launching something? That first, buy or lease? What are the factors?
Well, I think that the first consideration is whether you can afford it or not. This is not buying a house. There is no FHA. There might be some USDA options, but there is no FHA. There is nobody that's going to figure out how to make it so you have zero down or next to zero down. Here's the other thing. We're not talking about loans that are part of a government program generally. So they're portfolio loans. You have to have, a very high level of credibility, credit, great financials, et cetera, and a good banking relationship so that your banker can go in and oftentimes in the ever shrinking category of community banks and smaller banks sit and go in front of a loan committee and say, at the time I bought my first commercial building, hey, here's this guy in his young 20s. His credit's all weird, and he somehow managed to pull together a down payment. But we know his family. Let's see what happens.
So what about that space? Is the priority the functionality of the space for the business at the moment, or do you look more toward an equity play over time, and the business is there to support funding the purchase of the real estate?
There's no good one size fits all answer for that. And even in our residential investments in real estate, people ask me, what's your strategy? Are you going to buy and hold? Or are you going to lease it out? Is it going to be a flip? Are you going to renovate it? And the answer is whatever is the best thing today for the need. So many of our spaces start as a leasehold estate. We start with a need. Maybe there's 10 people in a call center for a new project. Maybe there's a group of 5 programmers doing X. Maybe we're creating a small research and development / assembly line. And we're going to start with a few thousand square feet, nothing big. We actually started our, just to give you a specific example, our Breeze radon monitors research and development facility started at 1,800 square feet. Today it's over 6,500 square feet, and that's in a period of 2 years. So it didn't make sense to go and buy a industrial space where we just have no idea what the future holds. And thank God we didn't, because there was a major disruption in supply chains. And if you're in manufacturing, which we now manufacture 4 products out of there, we're heading to, by the end of the year, we're hoping to have around 30 or 35 people working 3 assembly lines. It's a massive amount of parts that you got to get from all over the world to make that happen. So it could be that we see supply chain disruption again. And if we do, then we're not going to expand beyond the 6,500 square feet this year. If we don't, and things keep going how they are, we might end up at 10 or 15,000 square feet by the end of next year or 2025. So there is no way in hell I am looking at purchasing an industrial space without knowing that what my space needs will be. So the business drives crazy. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
There would be an exception, though. Again, this is about making the best decision of the day. If there was an amazing 10,000 square foot industrial space, well positioned in a location where I knew I could fill it with something, or worst case scenario, rent it out, and it was a good deal, oh, I'd buy it. I'd buy it in a heartbeat.
So talk about the conversation that a business owner has with a broker slash landlord and says, I know I need 2,000 square feet today. And if things go well, I need 6,000 square feet next year. And if the moon and stars align, I need 20,000 in 5 years. How do you have that conversation? How do you structure that? And how does that help you in initial site selection?
So let's say, because most businesses have this issue, like you don't know where Breeze Manufacturing is and you don't care. As long as the FedEx boxes show up with your stuff, you're good. I mean, maybe you care that I make it in America, and of course we do all of our final assembly here and development. But other than that, you don't care. For many businesses, they care about where they're located, both for employees and for customers, and they have a place to where they can come in. They're getting an office space for a reason. So as an example, Priority Lab, one of the largest environmental labs in the world now, started as a 2,400 square foot space. We were very specific about our site selection there, and these were the things we looked at. Number one was expandability, but also expandability in the same complex and portion of the complex. Because once we got you used to sending in samples,
So your expansion had to be
interacting,
contiguous. You couldn't be
right,
broken all over the complex.
right, and we were actually okay with the possibility that we would be broken up all over the complex, but that we could keep that main administrative hub at least at the same location. We got lucky in that some of the tenants in our section of that office complex, which was right near the Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport, off of Commercial, they started moving out. Well, great. And as they were moving out, the landlord got to the point where they started coming to us. Hey, we got somebody moving out. Here's the deal we'll give you on this. Are you ready to expand again? And we just kept doing it until we had taken over a whole building, and now we're looking at the next one.
Should a business owner expect to be paying a premium on that first chunk of space to, you might say, anchor for those contiguous spaces, or not so much?
I've had it both ways. Sometimes the landlord, and I'm a commercial landlord, so I kind of get it from the other side too. Sometimes you look at this business owner and say, hey, this is a startup. You can't, you want them to succeed in it, and it's a smaller space. It's a weirder space. The guys that need bigger spaces are generally established businesses. So there does tend to be, while it's usually a slightly higher per square foot, the package is pretty good and pretty flexible in that smaller office space, because look at who you're dealing with.
Yeah. Talk about acquisition when there's an acquisition of talent, there's an acquisition of customer base. Important is it that you can acquire space, or generally speaking, and obviously there's a host of variables, that you have the ability to make the acquisition and flex into a more preferred space?
Well, it's huge, but also you have to make sure that you're in a space that in the area is good. Hopefully, you just know the area that you're looking at. I mean, you know, if you get to a point where you don't even know the area you're looking at, you're in a totally different category. Um, and that's when you need to start making good relationships with commercial real estate brokers, which we have several now. But the originally it was, I'm looking at it and I'm looking at a couple of things. Is this office complex where, you know, I'm looking generally for office complexes if I'm starting off in a space and need that expandability. What's the history of that landlord? How are they treating their tenants in other places? It's okay to go online and look that stuff up. You know, you can creep around and you'll find somebody. If they've pissed somebody off, they're findable. But also, you can check the deed records and you can see what their mortgage looks like. And if you can't see that, they might be a big enough company that they publish some financials somewhere, or they're willing to share them with you. I didn't want it to invest $1 million in a space for an environmental lab with advanced equipment and draft hoods. And by the way, as a tenant, being responsible for all of the mechanicals, all of the improvements, moving in and finding out, oh my gosh, it's Florida. These air conditioners aren't keeping up. I got to go put 20 grand on the roof now. Oh, that's great. So I do all of that. And then one day somebody comes along and says, oh, your landlord has gone bankrupt. You know, that would be bad news. So it's an okay question to ask them about their financial condition. Most of them have pretty good financial conditions and don't mind sharing. I forget where I was going with that, but it was part of, what was your original question?
So I'll ask you the next question. As a business owner, what are the type of questions I should be asking of a broker slash landlord that will tell me immediately they understand we're in growth mode, we're in flex mode, because there's some that, yeah, we can rent you the space. Thank you very much. This is the cost. And you can't engage in the conversations about evolving and developing businesses. What are some of the questions you might use to pre-screen to know you're speaking to somebody that you can work with?
Well, I think you know your business and what your expansion might look like better than any commercial real estate broker is likely to know. And
I want to know that they can accommodate me and understand the conversations that I'm telling them. When I say I want to go from 2 to 10 to 12, I may need to flex over this way. The guy looks at me and he's glazed over. I'm dealing with the wrong person, even if I have the potential to be into the right building. That's
sure.
I know.
So the way I do it is I will look at an area at an office complex and say, show me everything that's available and let's go tour. You know, like today I need 2,000 square feet, but I'd love to go tour what's available in the 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 square foot space as well. And I'm okay with touring that in an existing open business. And if you're not comfortable with that, I totally understand. And if they say no, that's fine. Maybe they can't get permission. Then just go show up at some of those businesses, you know, and then see. You might get some more information than you thought, than you set out to get. But you know, generally, this is the biggest problem with commercial real estate brokers is that they don't operate like residential real estate brokers in most markets. It's not a come talk to me and I can sell you any house from any real estate agent in the market. It's more, hey, come talk to me. We have an inventory of X. And they really do a lot of me and me stuff. There's not a lot of cooperative payment schedules. So,
Right.
you know, it's not worth it for them to show other properties. Now, if you look at that commercial broker and you talk to him about his inventory and his history and how many properties he has, you know, in rotation, that tells you if they have at their brokerage the ability to serve you.
Got it. How important is that broker also has financial accesses that they have private money and contacts that they can get you in contact with?
It's never been important to me. I imagine it's important to some that have different goals in investing in real estate. Particularly if you look at, and I looked at a property I didn't end up pulling the trigger on. It was a couple of shopping centers that had been built up, built out. They had 80% occupancy, and this is what these guys do. Like, they're professionals at it. They develop that. They do it in front of a big anchor store, and then they get good long leases with, I don't know, a sub shop and a salon and that sort of stuff, all your services, and then they sell it, and they sell it at a regular multiple. And those guys that are involved in the sales of those, they have good banking relationships. They care about that stuff. The building I'm sitting in here, our headquarters, we actually have 2 buildings out of 5 in an office complex, which is nice because it's like, it's a condo. So I have 2 out of 5 votes in everything. Nice to be king, right? But it's 20,000 square feet. And the guy that was selling it was one of the investors in the building, or at least the one next door. And they had no connection to financing other than, oh, well, here's our bank we use, but they didn't really know.
Yeah. How important is co-location? You bring up an interesting point. If you're in 20,000 at the headquarters, it's in 2 buildings of 10. Would you have preferred to be in 120?
Whatever space you're in, you tend to start utilizing that space really well. And this goes for office or your house. I mean, you can live in any style of house, and you're going to figure out how to make it work for you in your life. Same thing here. So it sort of started to define our business and say, all right, we're going to put a call center on this floor. We're going to put an administrative function on this floor. And then we sort of figure out who works together the best and who who distracts each other the most. And then you start moving departments around. And we were very lucky in our headquarters buildings because they're kind of set up as 2 stories with quadrants. And you can go, all right, this quadrant is one department, this quadrant is another department. When this department gets so big, now it's 2 quadrants. And then when a department just blows it out completely, okay, you give it another name, you go rent it another 10,000 square feet down the street. And you want to now, at a certain scale, once you get over 20, 30, 40,000 square feet that you have in one town, now you have to have them in a lot of different areas of town, because of the population and the job seekers. You want the job applicants from all those different spots. People don't all want to come to the same part of town each day.
Interesting. How many, talk to me about the impact of COVID on how you've used space, meaning, did you suddenly find you were in excess in certain segments, shortage in other segments?
Well, certainly we had to suddenly make some changes, particularly the 6-foot rule. And I have this thing I do where I don't like buying a bunch of cubicles, and there's going to be somebody watching this that says, "Oh, you're an idiot," and maybe I am. There's a company called like Herman Miller, and these guys, they know what they're doing. Like, you basically just give them, here's the layout, and they can come up with awesome cubicles, and they're there, and they're a ton of money. They are just a ton of money. If you have hundreds of call center spaces, like, it's a lot. And I'm a home inspector's son. We grew up on, macaroni and cheese. So I don't like spending money frivolously. And so we built our own, and we built them out of 2x4s and drywall. And some of them were, very unfortunately, 4.5 or 5.5 feet. So there was nothing we could do about it. We had to deplete the population, particularly in March, April, May, when it was most vicious, the regulations here. we had to expand.
Deplete the population, meaning you had people that work from home. You ripped out some cubicles. You worked every other. What do you mean? When you
No,
say
we
deplete?
we didn't do any work from home at any of our locations. We immediately expanded space, rented more space, and basically just doubled the number of cubicles, knowing that, hey, we've expanded by 35% year after year. Um, what's going to change about this year? We don't own the entire market yet. The market could be cut in half. We could still grow. So let's go ahead and take advantage of this. There are some properties that are coming available. People are freaking out, so we just rented out 2 more spaces very quickly, and then built out some cubicles.
Which which is preferable in your mind? And it's a generalization. Buying too much space and renting it out and growing into it, or just going with what you need and being as frugal and fiscally responsible, you might say, in the moment.
Well, I don't know that it's pretty assumptive to say that it's the best fiscal decision. The
In the
best
moment.
fiscal,
That's why the caveat was in the moment.
yeah. Well, at that moment, it might be just the scale that you can do.
Yeah.
It does make it easier to finance, and sometimes gives you better terms. So, there is a financial argument to be made for being more than 25%, more than 50%, or more than 75% of owner occupied space, particularly in offices and Class B and Class C offices. That gives you a much easier path and a much cheaper path to owning your own building. So yeah, I mean, you could keep it reasonable. You don't want to put yourself in a position. I think most business owners, just by virtue of the average business size in America, if you were to go and buy up all the space that we have both owned and leased, and then go and buy all the space that my parents have owned and leased, and wow, that would be a hell of a mortgage, and it wouldn't be a lease that I'd be out at the end of a year. It wouldn't be and by the way, even if you've leased and you've long-term leased and you don't need the space anymore, you can always sublease or hand it back to the landlord. There's a way out. If you over mortgage it, you don't have a way out. So there is something to be said for fiscal conservatism. The bigger thing is being stuck in a particular spot. When I started Priority Lab down in Fort Lauderdale 6 years ago, there was a property that I loved. I was so in love with this property, I almost pulled the trigger and bought it. It was it was a remediation company before, and it had all this awesome signage, and they had a big warehouse and all that stuff. It was 6,000 square feet, and there were 12 parking spots. Imagine where I would be today.
Yeah.
I'd be so stuck.
You'd be having a shuttle.
Yeah, yeah, it would suck.
Bring up an important reminder, though, is about parking. And if the parking's appropriate for the use today, and it's not appropriate for the use tomorrow, or for that next person you may sell to, parking is a great limit. I look at a building about 3 years ago now that was not quite that size. It was about 4,000 feet, and it had 7 parking spots. There was no way around that unless you went down to the supermarket and you parked there and walked down. But that was a showstopper.
I had like 3 things that I had on a list that I wanted to make sure we mentioned. Well, 4 actually. Number 1.
And if it turns into 10, I would not be surprised.
No, I'll be pretty quick, and it'll be 4. So the first thing is, be aware of what's customary and typical in your market. The first time I leased property in Florida, at 9 feet above sea level, and in a place where hurricanes can affect whether people can even get to the office, or if the office is completely submerged underwater. When I leased that, they presented me with a lease, and within it, the terms basically said, hey, if there's a hurricane, that's not our problem, and you continue paying your lease whether whether we're able to ever rebuild. And I'm like, that is a crazy term and condition to a kid from the Midwest. It's just, it's unconscionable. So I took that lease, handed it back to my attorneys, and they're like, oh yeah, like the attorneys here in Indiana that had done leases in multiple states, like they're not dummies about this. And they're like, we'll rewrite that a little bit. We understand what their issue might be. Oh, they slammed us because their financiers wouldn't allow them to have a lease that didn't have that term and condition. And anybody in that flood zone, hurricane zone, they're in the same boat. So if you read a lease in the state of Florida or in Tornado Alley or where in an earthquake zone or where there are war riots, civil commotion, California, just sign the damn form. Don't worry about
Everyone
it.
agrees at the same time, then everyone defaults at the same time. Right?
Yeah, so that's one thing, but it leads me back to another thing that was in that lease, which is you're responsible for everything. And in more and more commercial leases these days, you're responsible for everything from start to finish. Now, the maintenance, the improvements, and I again moved into this property with the lab, and as it expanded, we found out very quickly that it did not have enough air conditioning capacity. Well, if you're leasing a property, the standards for what a commercial inspection are can help with this. I have commercial inspections on these buildings, which was a natural thing for me to want to do because I was buying them, and it kind of equates in my head to what residential real estate feels like. And my parents are in the space, and so I had them do those inspections here, and they were much more inventory. They were much more, here's what you got, than a residential inspection. And I wish I had done that on every lease because I got bit a lot of times, and I end up having to come in and rebuild the places for these landlords because I didn't know. And
It's
I'm in the business.
interesting you mentioned due diligence as a tenant or as a landlord at Monument Commercial Building Inspections. We actually have clients who are the tenant, where we're looking at the building on the way in so they know what they've purchased, or not purchased, but they're putting under contract. And we have landlords with triple net leases. We look at the building when that tenant first goes in. We look at the building again 5 years later to determine how has this person cared to my building, and that impacts what that next lease looks like. So knowledge is power, and power is money. No matter which seat you sit in, when you control the information, you control the negotiation.
Oh yeah. Well, I would love to see people spend, I mean, as much diligence as they do on the rental car that they pick up at the airport as they do on their commercial office space that they lease. And and I feel so kind of stupid because on a few of these early on, I got bit, and I'm in the space, and I was sitting here going, "Oh, come on, it's a lease." Anyway, that was one of my points.
And your point number two.
Yeah, point number two. Don't be suckered into bad square footage.
What is bad square footage?
Okay, so if you think about a cubicle, okay, so most people getting into commercial real estate, they're doing it for an office purpose. Most people aren't in manufacturing. If you are, a totally different thing. It's got to meet your use. It's got to have the right length for your assembly lines and that sort of thing. But if you're in office space, then you're looking at how many people can fill this space functionally, have a good work environment, and all of that. I looked at a space the other day, and it's from a friend of mine, okay, that I'm looking to lease, and I don't want to insult anybody, but it's listed as 6,000 square feet. I have had 2,500 square foot spaces that I could fit more cubicles into just because of the way it's formatted. And in fact, I have it up on my screen. I'm not sure if I can share it with you, but if I can, I see the share button if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, go ahead. Pop
Okay.
it up.
So here it goes.
And the folks who are listening on the podcast just went, dude, I can't see that.
Oh, that's too bad. Okay, well, we'll describe it a little bit. But okay, so there's an elevator that comes down into a corridor, and you can see that there's this 89 square feet. And this is something you need to know if you're getting into commercial real estate. They count all of the square footage, even if the square footage literally leaves your floor and goes to another floor. They still count it in the square footage. So you got 89 square feet there, and you pop out and there's nearly 200 square feet just in kind of a mezzanine right outside of this elevator door. Okay, so that's not really usable space, and the only reasonable spot to kind of wall this off and have a door so we can have our computers and phones behind a lock is at this line where the corridor is. So you picture the elevator door out to a 20 by 20 space, and then a 20-foot wall with a double door. That would be your entry. Well, you just lost now out of this corridor space, which the corridor is 625 square feet of this floor. That's a hallway that just got sucked up over 10% of the square footage, just one hallway. And now that's going to be space that gets cut into. And then you really just have this 1,000 square feet over here, 1,100 back here, and 633 over here. So 1,100, 2,000, basically 3,000 square feet. And over here, there's another 400 square feet that's all kitchen. Now, this 1,124 square feet up here in the top left of your screen and the 492 in the top right, neither of those rooms have a window, and the ceiling is 9.5 feet.
Not a pleasant place to spend the day.
Exactly. So, when the commercial broker in this case, and I may not get a deal done with this space for this reason, we just may simply not come to terms, and that's perfectly fine. You move on. There's lots of space out there. But my argument is going to come when I take all this and I design it with the cubicles in it. And your typical cubicle space is around 6 foot by 8 foot really today. And then you got to have a 36-inch hallway between them. And by the time I get that all done, they're going to see visually, hey, this is worth 3,000 square feet to me anywhere else that I might rent.
Right.
So I'm happy to pay the 3,000 square feet at a market rate, but there's no way in hell I'm paying 6,000. So anyway.
So the essence of the point is to assure that the square feet are usable square feet, and that what you're spending money on is what's usable, not what just happens to be conditioned or confined.
Exactly. And I wanted to show that for that reason, because people get stuck in these bad leases. Now, as you look at that, keep in mind that this is additional spaces, one floor of a 3-floor building. And the tenant on one of the other floors already pays for this space. So they're also not that willing to negotiate too much. Yeah. But they are willing to keep landlocked space with a door closed on it, because they're getting their lease payments anyway. I don't like that, because this is, again, what your commercial broker, the conversation you really need to have on the front end. Well, what's going to happen to me if I don't use this space anymore? Does this landlord, do you have the kind of relationship with this landlord, and do they have the inventory that I can say, hey, I'm not using that space anymore, and by the way, I want to go to this side of town. What do you got for me? And what will be the term of transfer that might be better than something else? So anyway, belabored that point.
Good point number 2, and great point number 3.
Great point number 3 is the one big thing right now on owning versus leasing, because so many people go out and they go and buy something, and then you can't grow that. You can't just cancel the lease. There's so many disadvantages, but there's a huge advantage to and an obvious one to your financial future and building wealth. And you look at everybody with big wealth in the world, they have commercial real estate in their portfolio. We're talking the big boys, the boys that fly the jets around the country, the Catholic Church. Pick anybody with a crap ton of money, they have commercial property. But even if you're going to buy a small amount and maybe landlock yourself a little bit, it still operates today as a great hedge against impending inflation. It's coming. And we just added to our money supply of, I forget the number exactly, but like $82 trillion in wealth in this country. We just added 6 to 8 and now about to be 10 to 12 trillion dollars worth of just printed money. And that's going to take, if the predominant office rate is $15 a square foot triple net in your market, there is going to be a point where a Taco Bell taco isn't $1.49 anymore. It's going to be $2.29. And that office space is going to be $23. It's just unavoidable unless you own it.
There
So
you go.
that's it.
I'm in that position. When I sell that building, I'm getting a bigger boat. So
Good.
did you tell me you had point number 4?
I kind of touched on it already, but there was the already leased point. This was point number 4. If you don't want to own, or maybe you just can't, maybe you don't have the 20, 30, 40% down that you might have to accomplish, and the amazing credit and great credit, great company history, it's a lot. It's not easy to get approved. So if you don't have that, here's what you need to do. You need to be ruthless, and you need to go and find a spot that it was already leased, and now they don't have a purpose for it, and they're stuck in a lease, and it sucks, and there's nothing they can do about it, and they still have X amount of time left that is enough for you to ramp into something else. And if you take on that that lease, it might be at a fraction of the cost. The very first time I ever, as an adult, was involved in a commercial real estate transaction. I was a senior in high school, and I started a property services company for large multifamily housing units. I'll tell you the story someday. It sucked, but I did pretty well. And I was, what was I supposed to do? I was in high school. I couldn't get a commercial lease. Nobody would take me seriously, but they wouldn't take me seriously in this game unless we had a commercial office space, unless we had that real address. So I just went and found one that was leased, no longer utilized. It was $7.50 per square foot is what I negotiated for a small corner of a building on 96th Street near Michigan Road here in Carmel, Indiana. And I subleased it from a guy named Brad White, who was in the mortgage business, and maybe not the best reputation in that business, but it's been a long time. It was 2000. Yeah. Anyway, so Brad White, if you're still out there, thank you. You helped me get a great start, and got a great deal on that space you didn't need.
That's where it all began. So Nathan, to put a bow on it for folks who'd like to get a little bit of insight about residential warranty services and the empire and affiliate companies that surround it, what's the best place for them to go, or the easiest way to reach out to you to have a conversation?
Sure. I have a website with some links. It needs a few updates, but it's not too bad. Nathan.tv. And if you click around there, you'll probably get where you want to go.
Excellent. Nathan, I want to thank you for being with us. I want to thank Nathan Thornberry, CEO of Residential Warranty Services, for spending time with us. We'd also be eternally grateful if you would like it, share it, and subscribe to the Commercial Real Estate Today podcast. And for all your commercial due diligence and building inspection needs, monumentcommercial.com. Have a beautiful day.